Hello and welcome to the March monthly webinar provided to you by Perry Johnson Laboratory Accreditation. My name is Mike Kramer. I'll be the presenter today. I am the Calibration Inspection Program Manager at PJLA. Thank you all for logging in and joining us this afternoon. As you can see, today's topic will be in regards to traceability. So we're going to look at the requirements specified in the 2017 17025 standard. We're also going to look at PJLA's policy on measurement traceability, which is captured in our PL2 document. As always, our monthly webinars are recorded, hence this will be available on our website, the recorded version, after we conclude today. The duration of this webinar is set for an hour. I don't anticipate it going that long. You can, as we're going along, if any questions come to mind, please keep them to the topic that we're covering today, traceability. You can type that question directly into your, should have a box provided to you on the screen there, where you can type questions in directly. And then when we conclude with today's presentation, I'll go back and review those questions and answer as many as I can. So, metrological traceability is section 6.5 in the 2017 standard. Correlates to section 5.6 in the 2005 standard, which was titled measurement traceability. So in a nutshell, as far as the actual requirements, you're not going to see a whole lot of differences here in this section within the two standards. However, most of the notes have been erased from the 2005. However, the 2017 standard has two annexes, A, B. Annex A is actually a annex with some more informational material in regards to traceability. So we're going to hit on the Annex A as well, just go over some of the information within Annex A. Again, 2017 is specific. You can get traceable measurements. It specifies through the use of an NMI, which is your National Metrology Institute, also accredited calibration labs. So we'll look at that. And we'll also touch on reference material producers, and that's conforming to ISO 17034. Again, from Annex A, there's some additional guidance for given there. Some organizations that have further guidance on traceability. This includes the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, the International Organization of Legal Metrology, ILAC, which you know is PJLA. We're recognized under the ILAC MRA, and they actually have a policy guide in regards to measurement traceability, which you can find on their website, and the ISO Declaration of Metrological Traceability. So we're going to look at the individual requirements here. So section 6.5, clause 6.5.1, and those folks that are currently operating or are used to the 2005 standard, this is very, very similar to what's already been in place. So the laboratory shall establish and maintain metrological traceability of its measure results by means of a documented unbroken chain of calibrations, each contributing to the measurement uncertainty linking them to an appropriate reference. So what are we saying there? We actually have a definition. This comes right out of the standard, note number 1 under traceability. We have a definition which is provided by ISO Guide 99, currently referred to as the VIM, or International Vocabulary of Metrology. So, metrological traceability is defined as a property of a measured results where the results can be related to a reference through a documented, unbroken chain of calibration, each contributing to the measurement uncertainty. And I purposely highlighted the measurement uncertainty there. So we have a simplistic view of a traceability chain on the right. So if you're a lab and you send an instrument in for calibration and you need to have a traceable calibration, and say you sent it to you have a test weight and you send it to an accredited lab, you're going to get a report back from that lab with a measurement uncertainty on there. So the traceability chain includes measurement uncertainty, where each time you add to that link, you're going to add to the measurement uncertainty. Why? Because the calibration lab that you sent your instrument to, they have standards where they had their calibration done, maybe to a higher echelon calibration lab, might have went directly to the NMI, National Metrology Institute. They would have an uncertainty associated with that. That would be a component of their uncertainty that they would be correlated to the uncertainty that's provided to the lab. So ideally, if this chain was had uncertainty included in it, each one of those links would be a little further, a little larger the further you get away from the international units of measurements in the U.S. if it's going through an IST, for example, starting at an IST. So again, note number 2 is a reference to the annex. So I have a snapshot there that comes right out of the standard. It's in the back of the standard. For additional information on metrological traceability, there's a reference to Annex A, which is new. Was not included in the 2005 standard, but the 2005 standard had a lot of notes in there. And if you look, you can correlate those notes back to the 2017 standard, not actually in the requirements section, but in the informative Annex A that is in the back of the standard. Okay, 652, the laboratory shall ensure that measurement results are traceable to the International System of Units, the SI, through, everyone have a list of things here, through A, calibration provided by a competent laboratory. So it does not state accredited there, it states competent. Again, we're going to look at the Annex A, we're going to look at PL2, further clarifies what goes into determining a competent lab. One sure way of assuring that you're are going to a competent lab is through accreditation. So what's depicted here is a sample scope of accreditation, in effect showing an organization is currently accredited to the 17025 standard. So we see the SI units referenced here. We see that referenced quite often in regards to traceability. It's referenced a lot in this section. So just for some informative material here, there's your 7 base SI units: length, math, time, electric, thermodynamic, luminous intensity, and amount of substance. So if you often wondered what they are, here they are in front of you for reference. Okay, continuing with 652, the laboratory shall ensure that measurement results are traceable to the international system of units through B, certified values of certified reference material provided by a competent producer with stated metrological traceability to the SI. So reference materials. So what I have depicted here is an example of traceability with reference material. What's pictured here is pH buffers. That's organizations will produce this material. They will assign it values. This can be used in pH testing pH meters. It's actually a material. Again, the standard references here, ISO 17034 are considered to be competent. So a reference material producer, accreditation to that is through ISO 17034, which is actually one of the areas that PJLA assesses laboratories, that reference materials producers that have a desire to have accreditation to the 17034 standard. Okay, you can assure that measurement results are traceable to the SI through, right to the NMI, direct relation of the I ensured by comparison directly or indirectly with national or international standard. So I got NIST reference there, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So that's the NMI in the United States, which is perfectly acceptable, of course, going directly to NIST for your traceability. Or you can go to another NMI that's under the same mutual recognition agreement through the International Weights and Measures Community through the CIMP, and it's sort of written in French there. You can see what that stands for. I'll just refer to it as CIMP, Mutual Recognition Arrangements. So here's a little bit more information in regards to the CIMP Mutual Recognition Agreement. That's the framework which the National Metrology Institutes demonstrates the international equivalence of their measurement standards and the calibration and measurement certificates they issue. Sort of coordinated like ILAC in the recognized accreditation bodies, for example, PJLA in the United States, and all the accrediting bodies are coordinated through ILAC through the Asian Pacific region, the APLAC region. Sort of the like NIST, for example, in the U.S., they participate in a program that's coordinated by the regional metrology organizations, and they play an important role in the CIMP mutual recognition agreements. The RMOs, regional metrology organizations, are responsible for carrying out comparisons and other actions within their regions to support mutual confidence in the validity of calibration and measurement certificates of their members and NMIs. So you can go directly to the website for a full list of participants, which of course NIST is. There are some countries, small countries, that have national laboratories that are not recognized under here. Not saying they're not giving traceable results. We're going to touch on that a little bit in PL2. You can still provide traceable results without being accredited or recognized under this mutual recognition agreement. Okay, when metrological traceability to the SI is not technically possible, the laboratory shall demonstrate metrological traceability to an appropriate reference. For example, we have two of them listed here. Again, we have certified reference material by a competent producer, i.e. 17034, for example. Then we have another area here. Results of reference measurement procedures, specified methods, or consensus standards that are not clearly described, that are clearly described and accepted as providing measurement results fit for their intended use and ensured by suitable comparisons. So I personally don't come across that too much. The ones that will fall under B, more so in regards to the testing arena. Some examples include hardness scales, reference standards established by the World Health Organization, and measurement procedures accepted by the Joint Committee for Traceability in Laboratory Medicine. Okay, Annex A. So that's the requirement. We just went through the requirements. It's a relatively short section in the 2017 standard. However, like we said, there's a Annex A in the back, which is informational. And if you, as stated here, if you comply with PL2, which is PJLA's policy on measurement traceability, you're going to meet the requirements of Section 6.5 of the standard, 2017 standard. So already, Annex A closely correlates to the requirements already specified. PL2, which recognizes the use of 17025 accredited sources, or producing objective evidence in regards to the 6 elements of traceability, which we're going to touch on when we go over the PL2 requirements. So Annex A, again, in 17025, various ways to demonstrate conformity with this document. Third-party recognition, such as an accreditation body, external assessments by the customer can go on site, or self-assessment. Internationally accepted path include, but not are limited to. And basically, what this is stated under A is what we just went over with National Metrology Institutes, and NIST in the case of the United States. So that's calibration and measurement capabilities provided by National Metrology Institute and designated institutes that have been subjected to suitable peer review processes. Such peer review is considered under the CIPM Mutual Recognition Agreement through the International Committee for Weights and Measures Mutual Recognition Arrangement. Services covered by the CIMP MRA can be viewed in Appendix C of the International Bureau of Weights and Measurements Key Comparison Database, which details the range and measurement uncertainty for each listed service. So sort of like a scope of accreditation for an accredited lab, you can go into the International Bureau of Weights and Measures database. They could see, for example, the capabilities of the NMIs. Another key point of Annex A is calibration and measurement capabilities that have been accredited by an accredited body subject to the ILAC, International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation arrangements, or to a regional arrangements recognized by ILAC, which PJLA falls under the APLAC, which I specified earlier, have demonstrated metrological traceability. Scopes of accredited laboratories are publicly available from their respective accreditation bodies. So let's go up on our website. We have a tab that says accredited. Accredited, I'm not exactly, can't remember what it's called. It says accredited labs, I believe. You can go click on that list, and you have access to the scopes of accreditation to all the labs under PJLA, as well as the other accrediting bodies in the U.S. and abroad. So when you see that symbol on a report, say for example, that accreditation number is unique. With PJLA, that accreditation number is unique to that specific organization. So why do we state that they're already determined to be traceable? When you see that, let's say that logo, for example, which you can look at it as a big stamp of approval. So the results are traceable because the laboratory has been assessed and its ability to produce traceable results has been established. This means that an investigation has taken place to determine that the chain of traceability is unbroken. So in other words, that is part of their assessment. In order to be accredited, the fact that they are producing traceable results has been assessed. When we send assessors, we're under the 17011 standard. Our assessors are technically competent in the area that they're assessed. So whatever testing or calibration disciplines you're taking, the assessor is going to know. They're got that background, and they're going to assess your lab. They're going to assess the traceability. And if it was determined that they're not providing traceable results, hence they would not be accredited. Just a little tidbit here. Even if the laboratory is accredited, you want to assure that if you're using that as a source, that you're getting an accredited type report. That you're getting a report that's intended to fall under their scopes of accreditation. You have the data, and you also have the uncertainty. By definition, the results are not traceable without the uncertainty. If the report contains the accreditation body logo, then by all means, it is intended to fall under the lab scopes of accreditation. Again, review the laboratory scopes of accreditation. You can be accredited. Does not necessarily mean for the particular calibration that was performed is covered under that scope of accreditation. Just a little extra legwork just to assure you're getting traceable measurements, even though the organization is accredited. It's covered under their scope, and you're getting the accredited report. All right, we're going to look at PL2 now. Things we've already discussed in the requirements of 17025 and the annexes, the annex at the end of the 2017 standards is covered under PL2. A couple other things I want to expand on that's also covered under PL2. In addition to recognize NMIs and accredited labs under ILAC, Perry Johnson under PL2, we also recognize state laboratory recognized by NIST through its Weights and Measures program. That's NIST Office of Weights and Measures, which has a program amongst the state metrology labs in order to achieve what a certificate of traceability. They have been assessed by NIST Office of Weights and Measures. They're subjected. Their standard, their document, which is NIST Handbook 143, correlates to 17025. So we do state that. The state lab system was originally started for commercial weights and measures, buying and selling over scales, gas pumps, those sorts of things. It's more like still is very integral in commercial, but they're also been deemed as like regional NIST labs, particularly in the area of mass. So states were started with mass, length, and volume standards donated by NIST. They're assessed by the Office of Weights and Measures. They're subjected to rigorous proficiency testing. So we do specify recognition under PL2, state labs. A lot of folks in the scale industry, particularly industrial type scales. And I want to go to here because here's an example of a certificate of traceability from a state lab. You see areas of mass, volume here. With mass echelon 3, basically your industrial type scales, your commercial type scales. A lot of folks use the state labs for those types of calibrations. So when the program was started, it was mass, length, and volume. Some states, this one we're looking at here, actually expands into tuning forks. This is a little extra thing that they do there, which I know is a standard that they use for checking radar guns. So in PL2, we recognize that you can provide traceable results and not be accredited. And we address this, the use of non-accredited sources, and also if you're not recognized under the CIMP MRA, such as NIST. If you go that route and not recognized. In PL2, we specify that copies of all documents and records associated with the organization shall be submitted to PJLA headquarters. So if you're going to use, if you elect to use a non-accredited source, for example, there's a form available upon request at our headquarters. This is an LF-123, which will summarize the evidence that the non-accredited external calibration provider is capable of producing results. So in other words, an organization can claim traceability. Sometimes it's a term that gets thrown around loosely. Our results are traceable. Like stated, if you're accredited, that's been determined by the accreditation bodies. If it's a non-accredited source, a little bit more work there other than the logo as far as the review of traceability. So we're going to look at what we require on the LF-123, the 6 elements of traceability, which is taken from the NIST website. So number 1 there, and objective evidence, I want to interject what is going to have to be sent for review to PJLA headquarters. This first one here, element number 1, a clearly defined quantity that has been measured. This is something, of course, we're going to have to look at the calibration report that was produced from the non-accredited source. This should be on the calibration report. So, for example, for a micrometer, for example, could specify the quantity, the actual size represented by a micrometer, for example. We're going to use that micrometer as we're going through these as to depict examples. The actual size of the micrometer was indicating 1 inches. So we need the data there. You have to have the at 1 inch, what is the actual calibration, say if that's the test point that's stated, and that should be right off the certificate. Number 2, a complete description of the measurement system or working standard used to perform the measurement. So what did the non-accredited source use for comparison? So that would need to be known. However, it would also need to be verified. So objective evidence that would be brought forth here would be, you would have to go, the organization would have to go to the supplier. They would need the report for the instrument that was used to calibrate your instrument. If that was done by an accredited source, it's an accredited report. if everything's in line there, then the buck hopefully would stop there. If not, then this will snowball over to the next organization down the line. So, for example, here with the micrometer, let's say, for example, it was a gauge block, ceramic gauge blocks, for example. So that would need to be stated on the report, identify that report. Then we would also need to see the traceability that comes with that. Number 3, by definition, the measurement uncertainty. So the non-accredited source would have to have a stated measurement uncertainty. That would be reviewed. It needs to be reasonable, may even warrant an investigation as to what was the actual uncertainty contributors that went into that. Number 4, a complete specification of the stated reference at the time the measurement system or working standards was compared to this. So this is your instrument. Has to be identified. Again, this will come right out of the report. Let's say, for example, your micrometer was a Matoya, perhaps identifying that along with a unique identifier such as a serial number. Should be right on the report. Number 5, provide an internal measurement assurance program for establishing the status of the measurement system and standard at all time pertinent to the claims of traceability. So the organization would have to produce some objective evidence they have an internal measurement assurance program in place. Ideally, they would be participating in proficiency testing. Other things that may be looked at are things like control charts, checks against reference standards with values from outside the organization. And last but not least, and this is confusing when this is read, it references another internal measurement assurance program. And this is actually in regards to the lab that is submitting the artifact to the non-accredited lab. Need to have an internal measurement assurance program themselves in regards to the measurement that device is being used. So if you are accredited and that would be known by the PJLA assessor. So that there are requirements for equipment's intermediate checks. So that should be covered under the assessment. So again, you can provide traceable results without being traceable. So PL2 recognizes this. Without being accredited. However, you can see there's hoops that have to be jumped through. LF-123 has to be filled out, and then have to provide the objective evidence that I just went through. Have to see the reports of their standards. Have to check out the uncertainty. Measurement assurance program. Assure that they have a measurement assurance program in place. A couple other things that's highlighted in PL2 is the concept of an in-house calibration. So that's a calibration performed by an organization for its own equipment for use in its accredited calibration or testing activities. By definition, an in-house calibration is a calibration the organization is not accredited to perform. An organization must establish traceability for the results of in-house calibration, and I'd like to highlight with the same degree of rigor required for accredited calibration. So, in other words, if you're a testing lab, for example, and let's say you decide that we're going to calibrate our own thermometers that's used in our testing procedure. You can do that, just bear in mind that would be considered an in-house calibration, and it will be assessed just like an accredited calibration. So things like the procedure, the personnel, even the traceability, the traceability, have to have the appropriate equipment the environment, everything that an accredited, say, thermodynamic thermometer calibrator would need to have to be accredited. You would also have to have the same. So an in-house calibration or internal calibrations, and defined there in front of you, and we go into some detail in PL2, which is basically is really the only difference between an in-house calibration and an accredited calibration as far as you accredit anybody is an in-house calibration is not on the scope of accreditation. One thing we do need to be aware of when we do assessments, if any of these in-house calibrations are taking place. Like I said, they're assessed just like an accredited calibration, and somebody technically competent in that area would need to be made available for that assessment. Something else that's highlighted in PL2 is how to reference traceability. You used to see quite often traceable to NIST, which is not appropriate. The folks at NIST does not like that. I've heard a speaker at NIST really get quite animate about that when they see traceable to NIST. Cannot state traceability directly to NIST. What I have here is, and this is taken right out of PL2, is an example. So when you reference traceability, it's actually through NIST. It's through NIST to the SI. So the test results published in this reports were obtained using equipment capable of producing results that are traceable through NIST to the International System of Units. So it's to the SI and is through the NMI. Something else I want to highlight here is NIST numbers. Don't see it as nowhere near often as when I first got involved in calibration. NIST numbers on the report. I propose a question here. Are submissions of NIST numbers acceptable as evidence of traceability? The answer is no. Why? Test reports issued by NIST are solely for administrative purposes. Although they're often unique identified documents that bear evidence of traceability, excuse me, they are not accepted as evidence of traceability. Okay, covered a lot of ground there in a relatively short period of time. Thank you. So bear with me a minute to state it here. We will try to go through some of these questions here. And I'm reading these live, so I'm trying to a relatively small space here. First question I have is stating, when will we use NMIs for 652, A and C? Well, 652 is a competent lab, which we specify further in PL2 if it's accredited. And then C is traceability through the NMI, which should be under the CIMP MRA. And I've probably mentioned this before. I'm a calibration person, so some of these specific tests may not be versed in. So this is specific about these requirements would be NA for a test in which the analyst identifies a bacteria as gram negative or gram positive. So again, I'm not familiar with that. Let me just, if you have a requirement that the measurement needs to be traceable, if it's in the testing protocol, then it would need to then the requirements that we just went through, and I call it a slam dunk. Quite often, if you go directly to an accredited source, got an accredited CAL or the NMI, you would have to go through those avenues. It would be easier, and well, this particular question, if it was a particular instrument that you're referring to, it sounds to me that you're referring to how you report the results. If there's something that's being measured here, and if those measurements need to be traceable, then the requirements would that we just went over would apply. I'm not sure if this is part of the same question. When calibrations are performed on thermometers, when calibration verification. So these are intermediate checks. These are different than actual calibration is what I think you're saying here. And a good system of intermediate checks, if you're showing your instruments are stable, that's your internal measurement assurance program that we were referring to as bullet number 6 there, under the 6 elements of traceability. So if you have a standard, you have a accredited, say, accredited calibration report, and then you keep tabs on it through the use of intermediate verifications, and I'm assuming this is what is being referenced here. That could be used as a means to perhaps increase the calibration. Do they need to go through the same requirements? They would fall under the requirements of intermediate checks on equipment. As far as calibration, you're not doing a calibration there. You're doing a verification. If you're going to say you're calibrating your own thermometers, then the same rigor. You have to have a procedure, everything in place that a calibration lab would have, the accredited calibration lab, and go through that whole process. Verification, no. Calibration, yes. Can you use the calibration? This is a calibration certificate that comes with a thermometer as your traceability for calibration, or should you do a verification on the equipment? If the thermometer is being used in your testing protocol and is required to be a traceable measurement, I know you can order sometimes thermometers that already have calibration reports on them. You can specify, I know, an accredited type report. If the thermometer already has a report with it, if it's a traceable report, say through an accredited lab, that would be fine. It still needs to be put on an interval. You can still, of course, maintain intermediate checks depending on how critical the thermometer is to your actual testing. I say that because let's say, for example, you have a two-year interval on that, and an intermediate check is a great thing to have, because if it went back for recalibration, sort of going off topic here a little bit, and that was out of tolerance. So if the temperature measurement was critical, you have to follow the protocol for non-conforming testing, and went because if it was out of tolerance when it was received, that means it was actually being used. So the initial report, if it was a accredited cal, then yes, that can be used for traceability. You need to determine that is something that you could specify. If it's a plain report that does not have the information that's required, the data or the uncertainty, by definition, then no, it will not be determined as a traceable report. If you're just verifying, and I just went through this a little bit ago, it's a little bit different than a calibration. You could do an in-house calibration. It could be traceable, but then it would be assessed just like a traceable calibration. All right, that looks like about all I have right here. So very specific to temperature calibrations. I hope I answered the question directly to exactly what you were asking in the way it was documented here. So before we sign off for today, and again, I want to thank everybody for logging in. Hope you found it. I sincerely hope you found this presentation informative. And next month, April 25th, we're still going through the requirements in 2017. So we're going to look at section 6.2, the 17025 2017, which is personnel. Critical. Have to have competent folks performing the testing and calibration, specific records that need to be kept, specific requirements stated on this section 6.2. So look forward, mark that on your calendar, April 25th. Thank you for logging in, and we'll see you all next month.